There are moments that split your life in two. Moments so small they could slip through your fingers like water, yet they change everything that comes after. For Amara Sinclair, that moment arrived on a Tuesday evening in a restaurant where the lighting was too dim and the music too loud, where she was balancing 3 plates on her left arm and a child's piercing scream cut through the noise like a blade through silk. She had always believed that life would get easier someday. It never did. 26 years old, and already she felt ancient. The kind of tired that sleep couldn't fix. The kind that lived in her bones, in the hollow of her chest where hope used to sit before the bills piled higher than her dreams. Her mother's medical debt was a mountain she climbed every month, only to find herself back at the bottom by the time rent was due. The restaurant job paid enough to keep the lights on. Barely. And some nights, barely was all she had. But she wore her exhaustion like an invisible cloak. Smiled at customers who didn't see her. Moved through the world as if she were made of something sturdy, when really, she was held together by thread and stubbornness. The child's cry sharpened. A little girl, no more than 4, with dark curls that tumbled past her shoulders and a face red from crying. She sat in a high-end booth near the back, the kind reserved for people who didn't need to look at the prices on the menu. Across from her sat a man. Tall. Still. His suit was tailored in a way that spoke of money that didn't need to announce itself. His hands rested on the table, large and steady, but his eyes were lost. He didn't know what to do with the crying child. Amara watched from across the room, her hands full of dainty dishes, her feet aching and shoes worn thin at the heels. She should have walked past, should have let someone else handle it. But something in the way the man looked at the little girl stopped her. Not with frustration, not with anger, but with a kind of helplessness that felt too raw, too real. She set the dishes down, wiped her hands on her apron, walked over. Before we go on, tell us, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments below. The little girl was sobbing now, her small hands covering her face, her body shaking with the kind of grief only children can feel so completely. The man reached for her, then pulled back, as if afraid his touch might break her further. Amora knelt beside the booth. Her voice was soft when she spoke, barely audible over the noise of the restaurant. Hey, sweetheart, what's wrong? The child peeked through her fingers. Her eyes were dark, drowning in tears. She won't stop, the man said. His voice was low, gravelly, edged with something that sounded like desperation. I don't know what she needs. Amora looked up at him then, really looked, and what she saw made her breath catch. Not because he was handsome, though he was, in that dangerous, carved-from-stone kind of way, but because of the fear in his eyes. The kind of fear that comes from loving something so fragile you're terrified you'll destroy it just by holding on. Maybe, Amara said gently, her eyes returning to the child. She just needs you. The words hung in the air. Simple. Unadorned. True. The man stayed at her. Then, slowly, as if moving through water, he reached across the table. His hand was large enough to swallow the child's small fist, but his touch was careful, tender. I'm here, Lucia, he whispered. Papa's here. And the crying stopped. Not all at once, but in degrees. The sobs became hiccups. The hiccups became silence. And in that silence, the little girl climbed out of her seat and into her father's lap, burying her face in his chest. He held her like she was made of glass, like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. Amora stood. She should have walked away, should have returned to her tables, her orders, her life. But she didn't. She stayed, watching this man hold his daughter as if she were the only anchor keeping him from drifting into some dark, endless sea. When he looked up at her again, his eyes had changed. Still guarded, still shadowed, but something else flickered beneath the surface. Recognition, maybe, or gratitude, or something neither of them had words for yet. Thank you, he said. 2 words. That was all. But the way he said them felt like a promise. Amora nodded, smiled, turned to leave. Wait. She stopped. Turn back. What's your name? She hesitated. In her experience, names were dangerous. They made you real to people, made you memorable, and memorable meant vulnerable. But there was something in his gaze that made lying feel impossible. Amora. He repeated it, as if testing the weight of it on his tongue. Amora. Then, after a pause, I'm Dante. The name fit him. Sharp, ancient, heavy with history. She nodded again, and this time, she did walk away. But she felt his eyes on her back the entire way across the restaurant. Felt them like a hand pressed between her shoulder blades. Warm, steady, inescapable. That night, when her shift ended and she walked out into the cold, she told herself it meant nothing. A kind gesture, a moment of connection. Nothing more. But the truth was already curling around her ribs like smoke. The truth was already changing the shape of her life, though she didn't know it yet. Because men like Dante Rossi didn't just appear in your world by accident, and they didn't disappear without leaving marks. She would learn that soon enough. He came back the next night, and the night after that, always the same booth, always with Lucia, who no longer cried but watched Amara with wide, curious eyes every time she passed. Dante ordered simple meals, pasta for Lucia, steak for himself, but he barely touched his food. Mostly, he watched. Not in a way that made Amara uncomfortable. Not in the way some men watched, with hunger that had nothing to do with appetite. No, Dante watched her the way someone studies a painting in a museum, with attention, with something close to reverence. It unnerved her more than hunger ever could. By the third night, she couldn't ignore it anymore. She approached his table after taking their order, wiping her hands on her apron out of habit, out of nervousness. You don't have to keep coming here, she said quietly. If it's because of what I said. It's not, he interrupted. His voice was calm, but there was a weight to it, a finality. We come because Lucia likes it here, because she feels safe here. Amara glanced at the little girl, who was culling on a napkin with crayons the hostess had given her. She seems happy. She is, now. Dante's jaw tightened. She wasn't, before. Before you. The words settled over Amara like a blanket she hadn't asked for. Warm. Suffocating. I didn't do anything, she said. You did everything. She wanted to argue, wanted to tell him he was giving her too much credit, too much power over something that wasn't his to hold. But the look in his eyes stopped her. It was the same look he'd had that first night, helpless, grateful, desperate. She nodded, walked away, but her hands were shaking when she picked up the next order. The weeks passed like water. Dante and Lucia became fixtures in the restaurant, as permanent as the tables and chairs. Other savers started to notice, started to whisper. Who was he? Why did he always sit in Amara's section? Why did he leave tips large enough to make the manager raise his eyebrows? Amara didn't have answers, only questions of her own. Questions that multiplied every time Dante's eyes followed her across the room. Every time Lucia reached for her hand when she brought their food. Every time she felt the strange, magnetic pull of something she didn't understand and couldn't name. It was on a Thursday, 2 months after they'd first met, that everything shifted. Amara was wiping down tables after closing, her body aching from a 12-hour shift, when she heard the door open. She looked up, ready to tell whoever it was that they were closed, and saw Dante standing in the doorway. Alone. No Lucia. No suit jacket. Just him, in a black shirt rolled to his elbows, looking like he'd walked through fire to get here. "We're closed," she said, though her voice lacked conviction. "I know." He stepped inside. The door swung shut behind him. Amara set down her rag. Her pulse was doing something strange, something erratic. "Where's Lucia?" "With my mother." He moved closer, and the air seemed to thicken around them. "I needed to talk to you. Alone." She should have been afraid, should have felt the warning signs prickling along her spine. But all she felt was curiosity, and something else, something that felt dangerously close to anticipation. About what? Dante stopped a few feet away, close enough that she could see the shadows beneath his eyes, the tension in his shoulders, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body. I need your help, he said. Amora blinked. My help? Lucia's mother is gone. Left when Lucia was 2. I've been raising her alone, and I thought I was doing fine. I thought I had everything under control. His voice cracked, just slightly, just enough to make him human. But I don't. She needs someone who understands her, someone she trusts. Amora's heart was hammering now. What are you asking me? Come work for me, as her nanny, live in my home. Help me raise her. The words hung in the air like smoke. Impossible. Insane. I don't know you, Amora said. You know enough. I don't know anything about being a nanny. You know how to make her smile. That's more than I've managed in 2 years. Amora shook her head, stepping back. I can't. I have my mother to take care of, bills to pay. I'll pay you triple what you make here. Cover your mother's medical expenses. All of them. His eyes were intense, burning. I'll give you whatever you need. Just say yes. It was too much. Too fast. Too everything. But God, she was tired. Tired of scraping by. Tired of watching her mother suffer because they couldn't afford better treatment. Tired of waking herself into the ground for scraps. And there was something in Dante's eyes. Something that made her want to say yes even when every logical part of her brain screamed no. I need to think about it, she whispered. Take all the time you need. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a card, and placed it on the table between them. But know this, Amora. From the moment you knelt beside my daughter and saw what I couldn't, you became important to us. And I don't let important things go. He left without another word. Amora stood alone in the empty restaurant, staring at the card on the table. A phone number. Nothing else. She picked it up, held it between her fingers, and felt her life beginning to tip, slowly, inevitably, towards something she couldn't see but could already feel pulling her under. She called him 3 days later, not because she'd made up her mind, but because the electricity had been shut off in her apartment, and her mother's medication was running out, and desperation had a way of making impossible choices feel inevitable. Dante answered on the first ring, as if he'd been waiting. I'll do it, she said. No preamble. No explanation. A pause. Then, I'll send a car tomorrow morning. The line went dead. Amora stared at her phone, her chest tight, her mind racing. What had she just agreed to? She didn't know this man, didn't know his world, didn't know what she was walking into. But she thought of Lucia's small hand and hers, thought of the way Dante had looked at his daughter with such helpless love, and she told herself that was enough. It had to be. The car arrived at 8 a.m. black, sleek, the kind of vehicle that turned heads as it rolled down her street, so out of place among the crumbling buildings and graffitied walls. The driver didn't speak, just opened the door and waited. Amora climbed in with a single suitcase and a knot of fear sitting heavy in her stomach. The drive took 40 minutes. Out of the city, into the hills, past gates that opened automatically, past hedges trimmed into perfect lines, past fountains and marble and wealth she'd only ever seen in movies. The house, no, the estate, rose before her like something out of a dream, or nightmare. She couldn't decide which. Dante was waiting at the door. He looked different in the daylight. Sharper, more dangerous. But when Lucia appeared at his side and broke into a run, throwing her small body into Amora's arms, all that danger softened into something else. You came, Lucia whispered into Amora's shoulder. I came, Amora whispered back. Dante's eyes were on her, heavy and unreadable. Thank you. She nodded, didn't trust her voice. He showed her to her room, a space larger than her entire apartment, with a bed that looked like it belonged in a palace and windows overlooking gardens that seemed to stretch on forever. It was beautiful. Perfect. It felt like a cage. You're free to go anywhere on the estate, Dante said from the doorway. Except my office. And the East Wing. Why? His jaw tightened. Because I said so. It was the first time she'd heard that edge in his voice. The first glimpse of the man beneath the careful control. And it should have scared her. Instead, it made her curious. The days fell into rhythm. Amora woke early, helped Lucia dress, made her breakfast. They played in the gardens, read books in the library, painted pictures that Lucia insisted on hanging in Dante's office. And every evening, Dante came home and sat with them for dinner, his presence filling the room like a storm barely held at bay. He was gentle with Lucia, patient, but with Amora, he was something else. Watchful, careful, as if he were afraid of saying the wrong thing, of pushing too hard, of scaring her away. She wanted to tell him she wasn't that fragile, but some nights, when she lay awake in her too large bed, she wondered if maybe she was. It was on a Sunday, 3 weeks after she'd arrived, that she saw the cracks in the facade. Lucia was napping, and Amara had wandered into the gardens, needing air, needing space from the weight of the house. She found Dante there, standing near the fountain, his hands in his pockets, his shoulders tense. He didn't turn when she approached, didn't acknowledge her, but she knew he'd heard her. "You don't have to stay out here," she said quietly. "It's your house." "I know." "Then why do you look like you're afraid to come inside?" He turned then, and what she saw in his face made her breath catch. Pain, raw and unguarded. "Because every time I walk through that door, I'm reminded of how badly I've failed her." "Lucia." "Yes." His voice broke. "Her mother left because of me, because of what I am, what I do, and now Lucia pays the price for my choices." Amora stepped closer. "She doesn't see it that way. She loves you." "She shouldn't." He looked away. "I'm not a good man, Amora. I've done things." He stopped, shook his head. "You should leave, before you see too much, before you become part of this." "Part of what?" He met her eyes, and in that moment, she saw it. The truth he'd been hiding, the danger that lived beneath his calm exterior. "I'm not just a businessman," he said. "I know what you are," she interrupted. His eyes widened. "You know." "I guessed. The guards, the secrecy, the way people look at you." She paused. "You're dangerous, powerful, probably criminal. And you're still here." It wasn't a question, but she answered anyway. "I'm still here." Something shifted in his expression, something that looked like relief, like hope, like the first breath after drowning. If this story has already found a place in your heart, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and check the description box below for more stories that stay long after they end. He reached for her then, not to pull her close, just to touch her hand, just to feel something real. And Amora, who had spent so long being invisible, felt herself becoming seen, becoming real, becoming something more than she'd ever been before. It terrified her, but she didn't pull away. The world inside Dante's estate was its own kind of reality. Days bled into weeks, weeks into months, and Amara found herself forgetting what her old life had felt like. The restaurant, the cramped apartment, the exhaustion that had lived in her bones like a second skeleton. Hey, everything was softer, easier, but also heavier in ways she hadn't anticipated. She was no longer just Lucia's nanny. She was the bridge between father and daughter, the interpreter of tears and laughter, the one who knew when Lucia needed space and when she needed to be held. She was the warmth in a house that felt too large, too cold, too haunted by things left unsaid. And Dante was becoming something she couldn't name. He watched her with an intensity that should have felt intrusive but instead felt like being seen for the first time. He listened when she spoke, actually listened, as if her words carried weight. He asked about her mother, about her life before, about the small dreams she'd buried beneath survival. And slowly, carefully, he began to let her in. She learned that Lucia's mother had been young when she left. barely 22. That she'd loved Dante but couldn't love his world. That she'd walked away and never looked back, leaving only a daughter who still asked for her sometimes in the night. She learned that Dante's empire wasn't built on legal foundations. That the men who came to his office in the East Wing wore guns beneath their jackets. That the phone calls he took in the middle of the night were never about business deals or stock portfolios. She learned that he was feared, respected, dangerous. But with Lucia, he was gentle. And with Amora, he was something else entirely. Vulnerable. It happened gradually. The shift from employer to something more. It started with dinners that lasted too long, with conversations that drifted from Lucia to their own lives, their own fears. It continued with glances that lingered, with hands that brushed when passing plates or reaching for the same book. And it culminated one night when Lucia had a fever and Amora stayed by her bedside, sponging her forehead with cool water while Dante paced the room like a caged animal. "She'll be fine," Amora said softly. "It's just a fever. You don't understand." His voice was tight. "If something happens to her." "Nothing will happen to her." "You can't promise that." "No," Amora admitted. "But I can promise I won't leave her. Not tonight. Not ever." He stopped pacing, looked at her with eyes that were too bright, too raw. "Why?" "Because she needs me. And because—" She stopped. Didn't finish. "Because what?" "Because you need me too." The words hung in the air between them, true and terrifying. Dante crossed the room in 3 strides, dropped to his knees beside Lucia's bed, beside Amora. And when he looked at her, she saw everything he'd been holding back, everything he'd been afraid to say. "I don't deserve you," he whispered. "Probably not," she whispered back. He laughed, a short, broken sound. "Then why are you here?" "I don't know." But that was a lie. She did know. She knew it in the way her heart beat faster when he entered a room, knew it in the way her hands trembled when he touched her, knew it in the quiet, terrifying certainty that she was falling for a man who lived in shadows and blood and danger. If you've ever felt torn between fear and love, you'll understand her. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and check the description box below. Your support keeps stories like this alive. Lucia's fever broke by morning. But something else had broken too. The careful distance Dante had maintained. The walls he'd built to keep Amora at arm's length. After that night, he stopped pretending. Stopped acting like she was just an employee, just someone hired to care for his daughter. He started seeking her out. In the library, in the gardens, in the quiet moments after Lucia fell asleep. He told her things he'd never told anyone. About his father, who'd built the empire on blood and fear. About his mother, who'd died when he was 16. About the loneliness that came from being untouchable. And Amora told him things too. About her own father, who'd left when she was 8. About her mother's illness. About the dreams she'd had before life taught her that dreams were luxury she couldn't afford. They talked until the stars shifted in the sky. Until the night felt like its own world, separate from everything else. And slowly, inevitably, the space between them grew smaller. He touched her hand while they talked, let his fingers linger, and she didn't pull away. He stood too close when they said goodnight, close enough that she could feel his breath on her skin, and she didn't step back. He looked at her like she was the only thing in the world worth looking at. And God help her, she liked it. But fear lived alongside desire. Because Amora knew what this was, knew what happened when women fell for men like Dante. They became collateral, became weaknesses, became targets. She told herself she needed to leave, before it was too late, before she became something he could lose. But every morning, she woke up and stayed, because leaving would mean abandoning Lucia, and leaving would mean never seeing Dante again. And both of those things felt impossible now. So she stayed, in the house that was becoming her home, with the child who was becoming her heart, and with the man who was becoming her everything, even though she knew better, even though she knew it would destroy her. Spring came to the estate like a whisper. The gardens bloomed. The air warmed. And inside the house, something else was blooming too. Something fragile and dangerous and undeniable. Amara felt it every time Dante looked at her. Every time their hands brushed. Every time he said her name in that low, rough voice that made her skin feel too tight. She told herself it meant nothing. That it was gratitude, not attraction. That she was confusing closeness with something deeper. But then there was the night of Lucia's 5th birthday. The party was small. Just the 3 of them, because Dante didn't trust the world with his daughter. They ate cake in the garden, played games under the setting sun, and when Lucia finally fell asleep in Amora's lap, Dante carried her to bed with a gentleness that made Amora's chest ache. They stood in Lucia's doorway afterward, watching her sleep, and the silence between them was thick with things unsaid. "Thank you," Dante said quietly, "for making this day perfect." "She's easy to love," Amora replied. "So are you." The words hit her like a punch. She turned to look at him, and what she saw in his face stole her breath. Not gratitude. Not friendship. Hunger. "Dante." "Don't," he said. "Don't tell me I'm wrong. Don't tell me you don't feel it too." She couldn't. Because she did. God, she did. "This is a bad idea," she whispered. "I know. I work for you. I know. You're dangerous, broken, wrong for you in every possible way." His jaw clenched. "I know all of it, Amora, and I don't care." He stepped closer, and she should have stepped back, should have put distance between them before it was too late. But she didn't. He reached for her, his hand cupping her face with a tenderness that contradicted everything he was. His thumb brushed her cheek. His eyes searched hers. "Tell me to stop," he said. She didn't. He kissed her, and the world fell away. It wasn't gentle, wasn't careful. It was months of restraint breaking all at once, months of wanton fear and need pouring out in a single, desperate moment. His hands were in her hair. Her hands were fisted in his shirt. And when he pulled her closer, she went willingly, like she'd been waiting her whole life for this. When they finally broke apart, breathless and trembling, Dante rested his forehead against hers. "I'm sorry," he said. "Don't be. You deserve better than this. Better than me." "Maybe." She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. "But I don't want better. I want you." The words hung between them. Irrevocable. Dante closed his eyes. "You don't know what you're saying." "Yes, I do. I can't protect you from what I am, from what my life is. I'm not asking you to." He looked at her then, really looked, and what he saw made something in his expression crack open. "You're going to ruin me, aren't you?" She smiled. "Probably." He kissed her again, softer this time, sweeter, like a promise, and Amora let herself believe it. Just for a moment. Let herself believe that love could be enough, that she could build a life here, that this man, with all his darkness and danger, could be hers. But peace never lasted long in Dante's world. The first sign of trouble came 2 weeks later. Men in black suits arriving unannounced. Conversations held behind closed doors. Dante's face growing harder, more closed off with each passing day. Amora felt the shift. Felt the tension coiling around him like a snake. She asked him what was wrong, but he only shook his head and kissed her forehead and told her not to worry. But she did worry, because she'd seen enough movies, read enough books, to know how stories like this ended. And she was right to worry. It happened on a Thursday. She was in the garden with Lucia when the gunshots rang out. 2 sharp cracks that split the air. Then shouting. Then chaos. Dante appeared out of nowhere, his face a mask of fury and fear. He grabbed Lucia with one arm and Amora with the other, dragging them back toward the house. "Stay inside," he ordered. "Lock the doors. Don't come out for anyone but me." "What's happening?" Amora's voice was shaking. "Just do what I say." He was gone before she could argue. Amora locked them in Lucia's room, held the little girl close as she cried, and tried not to imagine all the ways this could end. Hours passed. The sun set. The house fell silent. And then the door opened, and Dante walked in. He was bleeding. His shirt torn. His knuckles bruised and raw. "It's over," he said. But Tamara saw the lie in his eyes. Knew that it wasn't over. Would never be over. This was his life. This was her life now. And there was no going back. If your heart's racing too, take a breath. And don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and check the description box below for more unforgettable love stories. That night, after Lucia fell asleep, Dante came to Amora's room. He didn't speak, just pulled her into his arms and held her like she was the only thing keeping him from falling apart. "I should send you away," he whispered into her hair, "for your own good. But you won't." "No." His arms tightened around her. "I'm too selfish for that." Amora pulled back enough to look at him. "Then don't. Don't send me away. Don't push me out. Just let me stay. Even knowing what it costs. Even knowing." He kissed her then, desperate and hungry and full of the kind of love that destroys as much as it saves. And Amora kissed him back, because she was already in too deep, already past the point of no return, already his. For better or worse, safety became a memory. After that Thursday, the estate transformed into something else, a fortress, a prison, a place where armed guards stood at every corner and fear lived in the spaces between breaths. Dante didn't explain what had happened, didn't tell her who'd attacked or why, just tightened security, limited their movements, and retreated into the parts of himself she couldn't reach. But at night, he came to her. Every night, as if she were the only thing that made sense in a world gone mad. They didn't talk much during those hours. Words felt too small for what they shared. Instead, they held each other in the darkness, the bodies speaking a language older than fear, older than danger. He touched her like she was sacred, like she was the answer to a question he'd been asking his whole life. And she touched him like she could save him, like love was enough to pull him out of the darkness he lived in. Neither of them spoke the words, but both of them felt it. The days were harder. Lucia sensed the change in her father, the tension that never quite left his shoulders. She clung to Amora more, asked questions neither of them knew how to answer. "Is Papa sad?" she asked one morning while they painted in the library. Amora chose her words carefully. "He's worried, but he's trying to protect us." "From what?" "From bad things." Lucia's small face scrunched in thought. "We're safe here." Amora pulled her close. "Yes, sweetheart, we're safe." But she didn't believe her own words. And from the way Lucia looked at her, the little girl didn't either. The fracture in their peace widened when Dante's mother arrived unannounced. Elena Russi was everything Dante wasn't: warm, expressive, quick to laugh. But beneath the warmth, Amara sensed steel. This was a woman who'd survived her husband's world, who'd raised a son in blood and secrecy, who knew exactly what dangers lived in the shadows. She embraced Lucia with the easy affection of a grandmother who'd been kept away too long. But when she turned to Amora, her eyes sharpened. "So," she said in accented English, "you are the one my son cannot stop thinking about." Amora flushed. "I'm Lucia's nanny." "You are more than that." It wasn't a question. Elena smiled, but there was sadness in it. "Be careful, Cara. Men like my son, they love with everything they have. But everything they have is broken." Before Amora could respond, Dante appeared in the doorway. "Mama." "Dante." Elena kissed both his cheeks. "You look tired." "I'm fine." "You're lying." She glanced between him and Amora. "But we'll talk later." That night, after Lucia was asleep, Amora found Dante in his office. He was standing by the window, staring out at the darkened gardens. "Your mother is worried about you," she said. "My mother worries about everything." "She's not wrong, though. You do look tired." He turned to face her. The lamplight cast shadows across his features, making him look older. "Haunted. I can't sleep." Why not? Because every time I close my eyes, I see them coming for you. For Lucia, and I see myself failing to stop them. Amara crossed the room, took his hands in hers. You won't fail. You don't know that. Yes, I do. She squeezed his fingers. Because I know you, and I know you'd bane the world down before you let anything happen to us. Something flickered in his eyes. Is that supposed to comfort me? It comforts me. He pulled her close, buried his face in her hair. I don't know how to do this. How to keep you safe and keep you close. How to love you without destroying you. Then don't choose, she whispered. Just let me stay. Let me be part of this. Part of you. You already are. His voice was rough. That's the problem. They stood like that for a long time, holding each other in the quiet office while the world outside turned dark and dangerous and impossible to navigate. But inside that embrace, everything felt simple. Wrong and right didn't matter anymore. Safe and dangerous blurred together. All that remained was the feeling of his arms around her and the certainty that she would never leave, even if it killed her. The breaking point came on a Sunday. Amora woke to silence, the kind that feels unnatural in a house that usually hummed with life. She checked Lucia's room first, empty, the bed already made. Unusual, but not alarming. Perhaps Elena had taken her to breakfast. But when she descended the stairs and found the kitchen abandoned, the dining room untouched, something cold slithered down her spine. She found them in Dante's office. The door was ajar, voices filtering through. Dante's, tight with barely controlled fury. Elena's, sharp with warning. And a third voice, male, unfamiliar, speaking Italian too rapid for Amora to follow. She shouldn't have listened. Should have walked away. But her feet carried her closer, her breath shallow, her hand pressed against the wall for balance. Cannot continue like this, Elena was saying. You're putting everyone at risk, including the child. I'm handling it. Dante's voice was ice. You're not. The stranger spoke in accented English now, as if aware they had an audience. The Moetti family wants blood for what you did. They won't stop until they have it. Unless what? Dante interrupted. A pause. Heavy. Suffocating. Unless you give them something they want more than revenge. Amora's stomach dropped. No, Dante said flatly. Absolutely not. You haven't even heard. I don't need to hear it. The answer is no. Dante. Elena's voice softened. At least consider. I said no. The roar echoed through the house. Amora flinched, her heart hammering against her ribs. Footsteps approached the door. She turned to flee, but it was too late. Dante stood in the doorway, his eyes finding hers immediately, and in them, she saw everything he'd been trying to hide. Fear, desperation, guilt. Amora. His voice was carefully neutral. You should go check on Lucia. Where is she? In the gardens with the guards. Dante, what's happening? Nothing you need to worry about. Don't lie to me. She stepped forward, her voice stronger than she felt. Not anymore. Tell me what's going on. He stared at her for a long moment. Then his shoulders sagged, and she saw the weight he'd been carrying alone. Come inside. She followed him into the office. Elena stood by the window, her expression unreadable. The stranger, tall, gray-haired, with eyes like chips of flint, regarded Amara with open curiosity. This is Salvatore, Dante said. An old family friend. He's here to help mediate a situation. What situation? Dante's jaw worked. A rival family. They want retribution for something that happened months ago. Before you came here. What did you do? What I had to do. His eyes were hard. To protect my territory. My people. And now. Now they want payment. Salvatore spoke up, his voice smooth as silk. They've offered a truce, in exchange for a gesture of goodwill. Amora's blood ran cold. What kind of gesture? No one answered. The silence stretched until it became unbearable. Tell me, she demanded. Dante moved to her, his hands gripping her shoulders. They want a marriage alliance between their family and mine. The words didn't make sense at first. Then they did, and the room tilted. You, she whispered. They want you to marry someone from their family. Yes. And if you don't? His hands tightened. Then they'll keep coming, keep attacking, until everyone I love is dead. The room was spinning now. Amora pulled away from his grip, stumbling back until she hit the desk. So you're going to do it? You're going to marry someone else? No. The word was fierce. Final. I'm not. Dante, Elena began. I said no. He turned to Salvatore. Tell them I refuse. Tell them they can have territory, money, whatever they want. But not this. You know they won't accept anything else, Salvatore said quietly. This is about honor, about power. A marriage alliance is the only thing that will satisfy them. Then we go to war. You'll lose. Salvatore's voice was gentle but firm. The Moettis have allies you don't. Resources you can't match. You're strong, Dante, but you're not invincible. And they know your weakness now. His eyes flicked to Amora. The meaning was clear. Dante's face went white. Get out. Dante. Get out. Salvatore left without another word. Elena lingered, her hand briefly touching Amora's arm as she passed. A gesture of sympathy, or perhaps apology. Then they were alone. The silence was deafening. You should have told me, Amora said finally. Her voice sounded strange, distant, about the danger, about what being with you really means. I know. I had a right to know what I was walking into. I know. He moved toward her, stopped when she held up a hand. Amora, please. Do you love me? The question came out broken, raw. Yes. No hesitation, no doubt, more than anything. Then let me go. The words hung between them like a guillotine blade. What? Let me go. Tears were streaming down her face now, hot and relentless. Before they use me against you. Before I become the reason Lucia gets hurt. Let me go while we both still can. No. He closed the distance between them in 2 strides, his hands cupping her face. No. I won't lose you. You don't have a choice. There's always a choice. His forehead pressed against hers. I choose you. Always. Even if it costs me everything. It will cost you everything, she sobbed. Don't you see? They'll destroy you. They'll destroy all of us. Then let them try. His voice was steel-wrapped in velvet. But I won't give you up. I won't marry some stranger to buy peace. I won't pretend you don't exist. I won't. She kissed him, desperate and fierce and full of goodbye. He kissed her back like he could hold her there forever. Like love was a cage strong enough to keep the world out. But when they broke apart, reality crashed back in. What are we going to do? She whispered. Dante's eyes were dark, determined, dangerous. We're going to fight. Against an entire family. Against anyone who tries to take you from me. It should have frightened her. This fierce, unbending refusal to bend. This willingness to bane everything down rather than compromise. Instead, it made her feel something else entirely. Loved. Chosen. Worth fighting for. Even if the fight destroyed them both. If you're still here, heart pounding, waiting to see what happens next, like, comment, subscribe, and check the description below. Stories this powerful deserve to be shared. There's something else, Dante said quietly. Something you need to know. Amora's stomach knotted. What? The Moettis didn't just threaten me. They made it clear that if I don't comply, they'll target the people I love. Starting with you. The words settled over her like ash. They know about me. Yes. How? Because I've been careless. His voice was laced with self-loathing. Because I couldn't hide how I feel about you. Because every time I look at you, the whole world can see what you mean to me. She wanted to be angry, wanted to blame him for pulling her into this nightmare, but all she felt was tired. What do we do now? She asked again. Dante pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her like armor. Now we prepare. We fortify. We make sure that when they come, and they will come, we're ready. And if we're not, then we run. You, me, and Lucia. We disappear. Start over somewhere they can't find us. You'd give up everything? Your family, your empire. In a heartbeat. He pulled back enough to meet her eyes. Don't you understand yet? You're not something I have. You're not something I own. You're the only thing that matters. The only thing worth keeping. The confession shattered something inside her. Something that had been holding her together with spit and stubbornness. She collapsed into him, and he held her while she cried. Held her like she was the only thing anchoring him to earth. And outside, the sun continued to set. The guards continued to pace. The danger continued to circle. But inside Dante's arms, Amara felt something she hadn't felt in months. Hope. Foolish, fragile, impossible hope. That maybe, just maybe, love could be enough. The waiting was worse than the threat itself. Days passed with no word from the Moetis. No attacks. No demands. Just silence that stretched taut as a wire, ready to snap. Dante became someone else during those days. Not the gentle father who read bedtime stories. Not the tender lover who whispered promises in the dark. He became the man the world feared. Cold, calculating, always 3 steps ahead. He moved through the house like a general preparing for siege. More guards appeared. Security systems were upgraded. Escape routes were mapped and memorized. Every window became a potential entry point. Every shadow a possible threat. And through it all, he kept Amara and Lucia close, never letting them out of his sight for long, never allowing them beyond the estate's walls. Lucia felt the change. She stopped laughing as much, stopped asking to play in the gardens, started having nightmares that left her crying for her papa in the middle of the night. It broke Amara's heart. This little girl who'd finally found happiness, now watching it crumble around her. We can't live like this, Amara said one evening after putting Lucia to bed. She's terrified. I know. Dante stood at his office window, his back rigid. But I don't know how else to keep her safe. Maybe. Amara hesitated. Maybe we should leave. Like you said, disappear. And go where? He turned to face her. They have connections everywhere, Amara. Europe, Asia, South America. There's nowhere I could take you that they wouldn't eventually find us. Then what? We just wait for them to attack. We wait for them to make a mistake. His eyes were hard. They will. They always do. And when they do, I'll end this. How? He didn't answer. Didn't need to. The answer was written in the set of his jaw, the coldness in his eyes. Blood. Violence. The kind of solution that men like him knew best. Amora should have been horrified. Should have recoiled from this side of him. But she'd stopped lying to herself weeks ago. She knew what he was. Had known from the beginning. And God help her, she loved him anyway. Promise me something, she said quietly. Anything. Promise me that when this is over, however it ends, you'll try to be better. For Lucia. For yourself. I can't promise that. Why not? Because I don't know if I can be. He crossed to her, took her hands. This is who I am, Amara. This is what I was raised to be. I can't just walk away from it. Not even for us. The question hung between them. Heavy. Impossible. Dante's grip tightened on her hands. If I could, I would. But my world doesn't work that way. Once you're in for life. The only way out is death. Then maybe, she stopped, swallowed hard. Maybe I should take Lucia and go. Maybe that's the only way to keep her safe. No. The word was sharp. Final. You're not leaving. Dante. I said no. He pulled her against him, his arms like steel bands. I can't protect you if you're not here. Can't protect either of you. And if something happened because I let you go. His voice cracked. I wouldn't survive it. Amora felt tears burning behind her eyes. This isn't Faye. No, it's not. He pressed his lips to her forehead. Nothing about this is fair. But it's what we have. And I'm asking you to trust me. To believe that I can end this without losing you. She wanted to. God, how she wanted to. But trust felt like a luxury she couldn't afford. Not when Lucia's safety hung in the balance. Not when every day brought them closer to whatever violence waited on the other side of the Moetti's silence. Still, she nodded. Because what choice did she have? She was already in too deep. Already loved him too much to walk away. Already his, for better or worse. The break in the silence came 3 days later. A package arrived at the gates. Small, unmarked. The guards brought it to Dante immediately. Amara watched from the doorway as he opened it, his face betraying nothing. But she saw his hand still, saw the color drain from his face. What is it? She asked. He didn't answer, just stared at whatever was inside the box. Elena appeared beside Amora, having rushed from the other wing. She looked inside, and her hand flew to her mouth. Dante, she whispered. No. What? Amora pushed forward. What is it? Dante snapped the box closed before she could see, but not before she caught a glimpse. A photograph, torn in half, of her. They've been watching you, Dante said quietly. His voice was terrifyingly calm. Following you, photographing you. The implications crashed over her like a wave. They knew her face, knew her routines, could get to her whenever they wanted. When? Her voice shook. When was this taken? 2 days ago, when you took Lucia to the gardens. Inside the supposedly secure estate. Inside the walls meant to keep them safe. They are already here, Elena said what they were all thinking. They've infiltrated your security. Dante's jaw clenched. Get everyone to the safe room. Now. Dante. Now. The roar made Lucia cry out from upstairs. Amora ran, grabbed Lucia from her bed, whispered soothing nonsense as she carried her down the hall to the reinforced room Dante had shown her weeks ago. Elena followed, her face pale but determined. They sealed themselves inside. Amora held Lucia close, trying to muffle the sound of shouting from elsewhere in the house, trying not to imagine what was happening, who was dying. Minutes stretched into hours, or maybe just minutes. Time lost meaning in the dark, windowless room. Then the door opened. Amora's breath caught. But it was Dante, alone, his shirt torn, blood on his knuckles, but alive. It's done, he said. What's done? Amora asked. The mole in my security. I found him. His eyes were empty, hollow. He won't be reporting back to the Moettis. The words should have brought relief. Instead, they brought a fresh wave of fear. Because Amora saw it now. Saw what loving this man really meant. Saw the violence that lived just beneath his skin. The darkness he carried like a second shadow. And she saw something else too. That she was trapped. That there was no leaving. No going back to her old life. That she'd crossed a line she hadn't even known was there. And on the other side was only him. Only this. Only the love that would either save them or destroy them. Probably both. If you're still breathing after that, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and check the description below. The story isn't over yet, and neither are they. That night, after Lucia finally fell into exhausted sleep, after Elena retreated to her room, Amora found Dante on the terrace. He stood at the railing, staring out at nothing. The moonlight made him look carved from marble. beautiful and terrible and utterly unreachable. Tell me, she said quietly. Tell you what? What you did, how you found him, what happened. He was silent for a long moment. Then, you don't want to know. Yes, I do. No. He turned to face her. You don't. Because if I tell you, you'll see me differently. You'll see what I really am. And you'll leave. I won't. You say that now. I won't leave. She crossed to him, took his face in her hands. I see what you are, Dante. I've seen it from the beginning. And I'm still here. I'm still yours. Something broke in his expression. Something that looked like relief and agony all at once. I hurt him, he said flatly. The man who betrayed me. I hurt him until he told me everything. Who sent him? What they know. What they are planning. His voice dropped. And then I killed him. The confession hung in the air. Stuck. Unforgivable. Amora didn't flinch. Didn't pull away. Just held his gaze and said, Okay. Okay. He laughed, sharp and bitter. That's all you have to say. What do you want me to say? That I'm shocked? That I'm horrified? She shook her head. I knew what you were when I fell in love with you. Knew it and loved you anyway. That doesn't change because you finally let me see it. He stared at her like she was speaking a language he didn't understand. How can you? Because love isn't about deserving, she interrupted. It's about choosing. And I choose you. Every time. Even when it's hard. Even when it's terrifying. Even when you're covered in blood and darkness and all the things that should make me run. Dante pulled her against him so hard it hurt. Buried his face in her neck and held on like she was the only thing keeping him from falling apart. I don't deserve you, he whispered. Probably not. She ran her fingers through his hair. But you're stuck with me anyway. They stood like that until the moon set and dawn began to creep across the sky. Two broken people holding each other together. Two people who'd found something impossible in the middle of chaos. Something that looked a lot like forever. Even if forever came with blood on its hands. Morning brought new intelligence. The mole had talked before he died, and what he'd revealed changed everything. The Moetis weren't planning a frontal assault. They were planning something worse. Something designed to destroy Dante not through violence, but through law. They'd been building a case, collecting evidence, bribing officials, and within weeks they planned to have Dante arrested, put on trial, sentenced to life in prison, which meant Lucia would lose her father, and Amora would lose everything. We could run, Elena suggested at the emergency meeting in Dante's office. Disappear before they move against you. And live as fugitives. Dante shook his head. That's no life for Lucia. Better than her visiting you in prison, Elena shot back. There has to be another way, Amora said. All eyes turned to her. She swallowed hard. What if you gave them what they want? I already told you. Not the marriage, she interrupted. Something else. Something they value more. Like what? Dante's eyes narrowed. Information. She looked at Elena. You said his father built this empire. That means there are secrets. Things other families would pay for. Things the Moetis would accept as payment. Understanding dawned in Dante's eyes. You're suggesting I betray my father's legacy. I'm suggesting you save your daughter's future. The words hit like a slap. Dante's jaw worked. His hands clenched into fists. It's not a bad idea, Elena said quietly. Your father kept records. Names. Transactions. Things that could destroy a dozen families if they came to light. If you offered the Moetis access to that information, it would start a war. Dante stood, paced to the window. Not just with the Moetis. With everyone. You're already at war, Amora said. At least this way. You control it. Silence fell. Heavy. Suffocating. Then Dante turned. His eyes found Amora's. And she saw the decision being made. saw him weighing his father's memory against his daughter's future, saw which one won. "All right," he said. "Set up a meeting." The meeting was arranged for 3 days later. Neutral Ground, a restaurant in the city, owned by a family allied with neither the Rosses nor the Moettis. Dante would go alone, unarmed. A show of good faith. Amora hated everything about it. "What if it's a trap?" she asked the night before. They were in his room, tangled together in bed, neither of them able to sleep. "Then it's a trap." His hand traced lazy patterns on her back. "But I don't think it is. They want those records more than they want my blood. For now, at least." "That's not comforting." "It's not supposed to be." He pressed a kiss to her forehead. "But it's the truth." "I don't like this." "I know. I don't want you to go." "I know that too." He tilted her face up, met her eyes. "But this is the only way, Amora. The only way to keep you and Lucia safe." "What about keeping you safe?" "I've never been safe." His thumb brushed her cheek. "But with you, I've been happy. And that's more than I ever thought I'd have." The words felt like goodbye, like he was already mourning something that hadn't ended yet. "Don't talk like that," she whispered. "Don't talk like you're not coming back." "I will come back." The promise was fierce. "Always. For you. For Lucia. I'll always come back." She wanted to believe him, wanted it so badly it hurt. But fear had sunk its claws in deep, and no amount of promises could shake it loose. They made love that night like it might be the last time, desperate and tender and full of all the things they couldn't say. And when dawn came, Amora held him tighter, trying to memorize the feel of him, the smell of him, the way he looked at her like she was the only thing in the world worth looking at. "I love you," she said. "I love you too." He kissed her, long and slow. "No matter what happens, remember that." Then he was gone. The house felt empty without him. Even with guards posted at every entrance, even with Elena and Lucia there, it felt hollow. Amora tried to keep busy, played with Lucia, helped prepare dinner, did all the normal things that felt impossibly abnormal. But her eyes kept drifting to the clock, counting minutes, counting heartbeats, waiting. 3 hours after Dante left, Elena's phone rang. Amora saw her face go white, saw her hands start to shake. "What?" Amora demanded. "What is it?" Elena ended the call, looked at her with eyes full of grief. "There's been a shooting at the restaurant." The world tilted. "No. Multiple casualties. Dante's driver says." "No." Amora grabbed Elena's arms. Don't say it. He's fine. He has to be fine. He promised." "He's alive," Elena said quickly. "But his heart. They're taking him to the hospital now." Alive. The word was a lifeline. Amora clung to it. "I need to see him." "The hospital isn't safe. If they sent shooters to the meeting, they could send them there too." "I don't care." Amora was already moving, grabbing her coat, her phone. "I need to see him." Elena didn't argue, just called for a car and more guards and followed Amora into the night. The hospital was chaos. Police everywhere. Reporters shouting questions. Family members of the wounded crying in waiting rooms. Dante's people had secured a private floor. Amora pushed past them all, ignoring their protests, until she found his room. He was alive. That was the first thing she registered. Alive and conscious and watching the door like he'd been waiting for her. The second thing she registered was the blood. So much blood. Soaking through bandages. Staining the sheets. "Dante," her voice broke. "I'm fine." His voice was rough. Strained. "It looks worse than it is. You're covered in blood. Most of it isn't mine." He tried to smile. Failed. "Come here." She crossed to him, took his outstretched hand, felt tears streaming down her face. "You promised," she whispered. "You promised you'd come back." "I did come back." His thumb brushed her knuckles. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. What happened? Ambush. Someone betrayed the location. His eyes hardened. But not the Moetis. Someone else. Someone who wanted us both dead. Who? I don't know yet. But I will. He pulled her closer, ignoring the wince of pain. Listen to me. Things are going to get worse before they get better. And I need you to promise me something. What? Promise me that if I tell you to run, you'll run. You'll take Lucia and Elena and you'll disappear. Don't wait for me. Don't look back. Just go. No. She shook her head. I'm not leaving you. Amora. No. She leaned over him, her hands on either side of his face. I told you before. I choose you. And that doesn't change because things get hard. It doesn't change because someone tried to kill you. It doesn't change, period. He stared at her, and in his eyes, she saw something she'd never seen before. Hope. Real, fragile, impossible hope. How did I find you? He whispered. I ask myself the same thing every day. She kissed him, gentle, careful of his wounds. Now rest. I'm not going anywhere. Promise. Promise. She meant it, even as fear curled in her stomach, even as danger circled closer, even as the world they'd built together threatened to crumble. She meant it, because some promises were worth keeping, no matter the cost. And this one was worth everything. If you're still here, still believing, like, comment, subscribe, and check the description below. Stories like this need readers like you. Dante stayed in the hospital for 3 days. 3 days of guards outside his door, of police questioning, of Amara sleeping in a chair beside his bed because she refused to leave him. Elena brought Lucia once. The little girl cried when she saw her father bandaged and pale, and Dante held her with one arm and told her stories until she fell asleep against his chest. It was in those moments that Amara saw it clearly, what they were fighting for. Not power or pride or revenge, but this, simple moments of love in the middle of chaos. And she promised herself that no matter what came next, she would protect those moments. Protect this family she'd found, even if it killed her. The doctors released Dante against medical advice. He was healing. His people had good connections, good doctors, but he needed rest, needed time. Time was the one thing they didn't have. Back at the estate, Dante called a meeting. Not just family, his entire organization. Men in expensive suits with hard eyes and harder reputations filled his office. Amara wasn't invited, but she stood outside the door, listening, learning. The attack wasn't random, Dante told them. His voice was stronger now, almost back to normal. It was coordinated, precise, which means someone close to me gave them the information. Murmurs of anger rippled through the room. I want them found, Dante continued. I want to know who they are working for, and I want them brought to me alive. And the Moetis? Someone asked. The Moetis claim they had nothing to do with it, that someone's trying to start a war between our families. Do you believe them? A pause. I don't know, but until I have proof, we assume they are telling the truth. I won't start a war on assumptions. Amara felt something like pride bloom in her chest. This was the man she loved, not the one who killed without hesitation, but the one who tried to think first, who tried to be better. For Lucia, for her, for himself. The meeting ended. The men filed out, each nodding respectfully to Amara as they passed, as if she were already family, already one of them. It should have felt wrong, should have felt like she was becoming part of something dark. Instead, it felt like belonging. Dante found her still standing in the hallway. You had some of it. And I think you're doing the right thing. She moved closer, trying to find the truth before jumping to conclusions. Even if the truth is worse than I imagine. Even then. He pulled her close, careful of his still healing wounds. I don't know what I did to deserve you. You didn't do anything. You just saw me when no one else did. His arms tightened. I see you, Amara Sinclair. Every beautiful, stubborn, terrifying part of you. She laughed. It felt good, normal, terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. He pulled back to look at her. You make me want to be better. Want to build something worth keeping instead of just holding on to power. That's the most terrifying thing anyone's ever done to me. She kissed him then, in the hallway where anyone could see, where his men would know for Satan what she was to him. And she didn't care. Let them see. Let the whole world see. She loved him, and she wasn't hiding it anymore. The traitor was found 2 days later. Not someone close to Dante. Someone close to the Moiettis who'd been playing both sides, hoping to spark a war that would leave him in position to seize power. It was clever, nearly worked. But Dante's people were thorough, and when they brought proof to the Moiettis, along with the traitor himself, an uneasy alliance was formed. Not friendship, not trust, but a mutual agreement to handle their common enemy together. The violence that followed was swift and brutal. Amara didn't ask for details, didn't want to know, just held Lucia close and tried to shield her from the reality of what her father's world looked like. But Lucia wasn't stupid. She understood more than they gave her credit for. Is Papa going to die? She asked one night while Amara tucked her in. The question stole Amara's breath. No, sweetheart. Your Papa is very strong. And very careful. But people want to hurt him. Yes. There was no point in lying. Some people do. But your Papa has lots of people who protect him, who keep him safe. Like you. Amara blinked. Like me. Papa says you protect him, that you make him stronger. Lucia's small hand found hers. Do you love him? The question was so direct, so innocent, that Amara couldn't do anything but answer honestly. Yes, very much. Good. Lucia yawned. Because he loves you too. I can tell. How can you tell? Because he smiles now. He didn't before. Not really. She nestled deeper into her pillows. I'm glad you're here, Miss Amora. I'm glad I'm here too, sweetheart. She waited until Lucia fell asleep before leaving. Found Dante in his office, staring at documents spread across his desk. She knows, Amara said from the doorway. Knows what? About us. About how we feel. Dante looked up. And she's happy about it. Amora crossed to him. She said you smile now. Something soft crossed his features. I do. Because of you. And because of her. Yes. He pulled her onto his lap, ignoring the papers. Because of both of you. You've given me something I didn't think I could have. What's that? A family. A real one. His hand cupped her cheek. I know this isn't how you imagined your life. I know I've brought you nothing but danger and fear and chaos. But I swear to you, Amara, I will spend the rest of my life making sure you don't regret choosing me. Tears burned behind her eyes. I could never regret it. Even when things get hard. Especially when things get hard. She kissed him, because that's when we prove what we are, what we mean to each other. And what are we? She smiled. We're forever, no matter what that looks like. He kissed her then, long and deep and full of promise, and for the first time since the shooting, Amara felt the knot of fear in her chest begin to loosen. Maybe they could do this. Maybe they could survive. Maybe love really was enough to build something lasting in the middle of darkness. She wanted to believe it, needed to believe it, and so she did. The weeks that followed were deceptively quiet. The threat had been neutralized. The alliance with the Moiettis held, fragile but functional. Dante's wounds healed, leaving scars that Amara traced with her fingers in the dark, each one a reminder of how close she'd come to losing him. Life at the estate fell into a new rhythm, gentler than before, more hopeful, Lucia started kindergarten at a private school with security measures that would make a president jealous. She made friends, brought home finger paintings and stories about her classmates, started asking if Amara would come to parent-teacher conferences with her papa. "Would you?" Dante asked one evening after Lucia had gone to bed. "Come with me." "To the conference?" "To all of them. To everything." He took her hand. "I want you there. As more than just her nanny. As more than just this." Amora's heart stuttered. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that I want you to be part of her life. Officially. Permanently." His thumb brushed across her knuckles. "I'm saying that I love you, and I want everyone to know it. I want you at school events and family dinners and every moment in between." "Dante, I know I can't offer you normal, can't promise safety or peace or any of the things you deserve, but I can offer you this." He reached into his pocket, pulled out a small velvet box. "I can offer you forever, if you'll take it." Amora's breath caught. Inside the box was a ring. Simple, beautiful, a diamond that caught the light and threw rainbows across the walls. "Marry me," Dante said. Not a question, a plea. "Be my wife, Lucia's mother, the center of everything I am." The tears came without warning, hot and overwhelming and full of too many emotions to name. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, always yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly, like it had been made for her, like she'd been made for this moment. They kissed in the lamplight, the diamond sparkling between them, and Amara felt something shift in her chest, something settling into place, something that felt an awful lot like home. "I love you," she said against his mouth. "I love you too." He pulled her closer, more than I knew I could love anything. They stayed like that for a long time, just holding each other, just breathing each other in, just existing in the impossible space they'd carved out together. And for once, the future didn't feel terrifying. It felt possible. The wedding was planned for 3 months later. Small, private, just family and the few people Dante trusted absolutely. Amora's mother cried when she told her. Cried harder when she met Dante and saw how he looked at her daughter, like she was the sun and moon and stars all at once. "He's a good man," her mother said later, when they had a moment alone. Amora thought about the violence she'd seen, the danger, the darkness that lived in Dante's world. His complicated. "So are you." Her mother took her hand. "But he sees you, really sees you, and he loves you anyway. That's rare, sweetheart. Don't let it go." "I won't." And she meant it. The night before the wedding, Amara couldn't sleep. Too much excitement, too much joy, too much everything. She found Dante on the terrace where they'd stood so many times before, where he'd told her he'd killed for her, where she'd told him she'd stay anyway. "Can't sleep either?" he asked without turning. "Too many thoughts." "Good thoughts or bad thoughts?" "Good ones. Scary ones." She moved to stand beside him. "I keep thinking about that first night, when Lucia was crying in the restaurant." "So do I. I almost didn't come over, almost walked past. But you didn't." He turned to look at her. "You saw her, saw me, saw what we needed. I saw a father who loved his daughter but didn't know how to show it. And now I see a father who'd burn the world down for his family." She took his hand. "Including me. Especially you." He brought her hand to his lips. "Tomorrow, you become my wife. Officially, legally, in every way that matters." "Are you nervous?" "Terrified." She laughed. "You? The big bad Mafia boss." "I'm not afraid of violence. Not afraid of enemies or danger or death." His eyes were serious. "But I'm afraid of failing you, of not being the husband you deserve, of not being enough." Amora cupped his face in her hands. "You're already enough. More than enough. You're everything. Even with all my darkness." Because of it. She kissed him softly. Your darkness makes sense to mine. We match, Dante, in all the ways that matter. He held her close, his face buried in her hair. Tomorrow, he whispered. Tomorrow you're mine forever. I was already yours, she whispered back. From that first night, I just didn't know it yet. They stayed on the terrace until dawn broke over the gardens, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. A new day, a new beginning, the last day of her old life, the first day of everything that came after. If your heart is full and your eyes are wet, like, comment, subscribe, and check the description box below. One more chapter remains, and it changes everything. The wedding took place in the estate's gardens under a canopy of white roses and fairy lights. The sun was setting, casting everything in golden light, and Amara felt like she was walking through a dream. She wore a simple white dress, no veil, no train, just her, the ring on her finger, and a heart so full it hurt. Her mother walked her down the makeshift aisle. Lucia stood beside Dante in a pink dress, holding the rings with the serious concentration of a child given an important task. Elena watched from the front row, tears already streaming down her face. But Amara only had eyes for Dante. He stood at the altar in a black suit, his hands clasped in front of him, his eyes never leaving hers. And in his gaze, she saw everything. The past, the present, the future they were about to promise each other. She reached him, and her mother kissed her cheek before stepping back. Lucia handed them the rings with a gap-toothed grin. The officiant began speaking, but Amara barely heard the words. All she heard was her own heartbeat, Dante's breathing, the quiet rustle of wind through the roses. Do you, Dante Rossi, take this woman? I do. He didn't wait for the question to finish. Didn't need to. I do. Always. The officiant smiled. And do you, Amara Sinclair? I do. Her voice was clear. Satan. I do. They exchanged rings, spoke vows they'd written themselves, promises that were both beautiful and terrifying in their honesty. I promise to love you in the light and in the darkness, Dante said, to protect you and Lucia with everything I am, to be the man you see when you look at me, even when I can't see it myself. Amara's voice shook when she spoke. I promise to stand beside you, to see you, all of you, and love you anyway, to build a life with you that's worth fighting for, to be your home, always. You may kiss. Dante didn't let him finish, just pulled Amara to him and kissed her like she was air and he'd been drowning. Kissed her until the small crowd cheered and Lucia giggled and the world faded into nothing but them. When they finally broke apart, breathless and grinning, he pressed his forehead to hers. Mrs. Rossi. Mr. Rossi. I like the sound of that. So do I. The reception was small, intimate. They ate dinner under the stars, danced to music that flowed through the gardens, and Amara felt something she hadn't felt in years. Safe. Dante held her close during their first dance, his hand splayed across her back, his eyes never leaving hers. Thank you. For what? For choosing me. For choosing us. He spun her gently. For making me believe I could have this. You don't have to thank me for that. Yes, I do. His voice was rough with emotion. Because you gave me something I didn't think existed. Hope. Family. Love that isn't about power or control or ownership. Just love. Amara felt tears prick her eyes. I love you. I love you too. He kissed her forehead. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life showing you how much. They danced until the stars wheeled overhead. Until Lucia fell asleep in Elena's arms. Until the guards started yawning and the staff began cleaning up. And then Dante swept Amara into his arms and carried her inside, to their room, to their bed, to the life they were building together. Ready for forever? He asked as he set her down. She pulled him close, her fingers tangling in his hair. With you? Always. They made love that night like they had all the time in the world. Slowly, tenderly, Like every touch was a promise, every kiss a vow, and when they finally fell asleep, tangled together in the darkness, Amara felt complete, whole, like all the broken pieces of her life had finally found their place. The months that followed were the happiest of Amara's life. She'd expected transition to be difficult, from nanny to wife, from employee to equal. But it wasn't, because Dante had always treated her like an equal, had always valued her voice, her opinion, her presence. Now it was just official. She stood beside him at business meetings, offering perspective he didn't have, helped him navigate the legitimate side of his empire, the parts that didn't involve violence or threats, became the face people saw when they thought of the Russell family. Kind, warm, approachable, a contrast to Dante's cold precision, a balance. Lucia thrived. She called Amara Mama now, easily and naturally, like she'd been waiting for permission to claim her. Brought home drawings of their family, 3 people holding hands under a smiling sun, and stuck them to the refrigerator with pride. And slowly, carefully, Dante began to change. Not completely. He was still dangerous, still capable of violence when necessary, still the man the underworld feared. But he smiled more, laughed more, spent more time in the gardens with his daughter and less time in his office plotting revenge. He started donating to charities, funding hospitals and schools, using his wealth for good as well as power. "Who are you and what have you done with my son?" Elena joked one evening over dinner. Dante glanced at Amara. "I'm just trying to be worthy of my family." "You already are," Amara said softly. "I'm working on it." And he was, every day, trying to build something better, something that Lucia could be proud of, something that wouldn't get them all killed. Of course, peace never lasted forever. Not in their world. The threat came 6 months after the wedding. Not from rival families. Not from enemies Dante had made in the past. From the law. An investigation had been building quietly, gathering evidence, making connections. And one morning, federal agents appeared at the gates with warrants and badges and the kind of determination that couldn't be bribed or threatened away. Dante was arrested in his office. Calmly, quietly, like he'd been expecting it. Amara watched from the hallway, her heart in her throat, as they put him in handcuffs and read him his rights. Their eyes met across the room, and in his gaze she saw everything he wasn't saying. "I love you. I'm sorry. Take care of Lucia. Don't wait for me. But she would wait, would fight, would do whatever it took to bring him home. Because that's what family did. The trial lasted 3 months. 3 months of lawyers and testimony and evidence that painted Dante as a monster. 3 months of Amara sitting in the courtroom every single day, Lucia beside her when school allowed, showing the world that he wasn't alone, that he was loved. The prosecution had a strong case, witnesses, documents, recordings, everything they needed to put Dante away for decades. But they didn't have the full picture, didn't know about the charities, the changed priorities, the man he'd become. Amara testified on his behalf, told the truth about who he was, not just the violence, but the love, the sacrifice, the father who read bedtime stories and made his daughter laugh. His not perfect, she told the jury, but his trying, every day, to be better, for his daughter, for me, for himself. And doesn't everyone deserve the chance to change? The jury deliberated for 2 days. When they returned, the verdict was split. Guilty on some charges, not guilty on others. The sentence, 5 years, with possibility of parole in 3. It wasn't perfect, but it wasn't life. Amara could work with that. She visited him every week, brought Lucia when she could, told him about their lives, about Lucia's school, about the business venture she was managing in his absence. "You're amazing," he said during one visit, his hand pressed against the glass between them. "Running everything, raising Lucia, holding us together." "I learned from the best," she said. "You're better than me. Way better together." He smiled, that real smile she'd fallen in love with. 3 years. 3 years, she agreed. And then you come home. And then I come home. The time passed slowly but surely. Amora kept the family together, kept the business legitimate, kept Lucia happy and healthy and loved. And she waited, because some people were worth waiting for. Some love was worth fighting for. And theirs was worth everything. When Dante finally walked out of prison 3 years later, Amara and Lucia were waiting. The little girl, not so little anymore, nearly 9 years old, ran to her father and threw herself into his arms. He held her like she was the most precious thing in the world. Because she was. Then his eyes found Amora's. She walked to him slowly. Let him drink in the sight of her. Let herself do the same. Welcome home, she said. He pulled her close with his free arm, Lucia between them, and buried his face in her hair. I'm never leaving again. Good. They drove home together, the three of them, to the estate that had been waiting, to the life they'd built and nearly lost and refused to surrender. That night, after Lucia fell asleep, Dante and Amora stood on their terrace, the same place they'd stood so many times before, where everything had begun and nearly ended and somehow survived. Thank you, Dante said quietly. For what? For waiting, for believing in me, for holding everything together while I was gone. You would have done the same for me. In a heartbeat. He turned to face her, his hands framing her face. I'm done, you know, with that life, that world. I'm out. Dante. I mean it. 3 years inside gave me a lot of time to think. About what matters. About what I want. His thumb brushed her cheek. And I want this. You. Lucia. A quiet life where the biggest danger is forgetting to pick up milk. Amora laughed through her tears. You'd be terrible at a quiet life. Then you'll have to teach me. That could take a while. Good. He kissed her, soft and sweet and full of promise. Because we have forever. And they did. Not the forever of fairy tales, where everything was perfect and nothing hurt. But the real forever. The messy, complicated, beautiful forever of two broken people who'd found each other in the darkness and refused to let go. The forever that started in a restaurant with a crying child and a desperate father and a waitress who saw what no one else could see. That he just needed her. And she needed him too. They just hadn't known it yet. But now they did. And that made all the difference. The stars wheeled overhead. The gardens whispered in the breeze. And inside the house, Lucia slept peacefully, dreaming of a family that was finally, completely whole. 3 people who'd found each other against all odds. Who'd survived violence and fear and imprisonment and came out the other side stronger. 3 people who proved that love, real love, was worth every fight, every sacrifice, every impossible, terrifying, beautiful moment. And as Dante held Amara close, the ring on her finger catching the moonlight, they both knew one thing for certain. This was their forever, and forever was just beginning. ##*, the end ***. Thank you for reading this journey from beginning to end. If this story touched your heart, moved you, or made you believe in love that conquers all, please like, comment, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to read it. Your support means everything and keeps stories like this alive. Until the next story finds us, may your own forever be filled with love worth fighting for.